Welcome back to Up to the Second College Football. We are in week 9. Looking forward to an exciting week here. This is presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. We want to remind you to have fun out there with Academy Sports and Outdoors. I love this sponsor. We're going to say it for the 3rd week in a row. I'm an Academy girl. I love it. David, I'm sitting down here with David Nuño. I forgot to introduce my co-host. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing great. I loved how you had maybe your uncle, your good friend, somebody reach out to me on Twitter that says you're not on enough content. You're a big super fan on Twitter that reached out to us. That was
just a fan, okay? I don't pay these people. They just want more of me. Who doesn't?
Yeah. It's funny that the last name was Smith. But anywho, let's talk some college football, shall we?
We shall.
So we're switching roles now because she's become the analyst and I've become more. Wait. Yeah, you're the analyst. What am I? I'm just the question person. So Kennedy, what college football games are you intrigued by this weekend?
Well, the one I'm looking most forward to watching is the Kentucky-Tennessee matchup. I feel like it's a really big matchup of the quarterbacks. Obviously, we've got Tennessee having the ride of their life right now, and we've got that Heisman potential quarterback with Hendon Hooker. Yeah. But I'll tell you what game I'm really not looking forward to is seeing A&M this weekend. I've lost a lot of hope in them. I'm not going to lie. It hurts considering where we are currently located, but...
So you don't even want to watch that 119th ranked offense in the game? You don't want to?
Oh, I'm going to watch, but I'm going to be crying in the process.
So let me ask you this, analyst. What does A&M need to do to rebound from that loss against South Carolina?
I don't really know what there is to be done. I think there is a million things that can be done, to be honest. I don't know one aspect of the game that I am overly thrilled with right now. I know special teams isn't doing up to my standards. Obviously, the offensive line isn't doing up to my standards either. But I would like to see more out of Connor Wigman. I think he is a beacon of hope for this A&M team. I don't want to say, though, that I have ruled out all of my hope in Haynes King. I just think that his offense needs to give him better opportunities. So I'd like to see both of them.
I'm going to add to that. I'd like to see a team not make a bunch of mistakes and have a chance to win, especially at home. Don't make a bunch of extra mistakes. As for the Tennessee game, I'm excited to see Will Levis and Hendon Hooker. That's going to be a heck of a matchup. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, we're going to get LSU Alabama next week. So let's see how that plays out. That's going to be a fun one.
For sure.
All right, so I should do this part, right, because we switch roles, right?
Sure, take it away.
All right, on the show today, we have Heisman Trophy winner, 1996 Heisman Trophy winner and national champion, Danny Wuerfell on the show. Good get by you. Braden Gall is going to join us. You've heard him on radio and on ESPN. He does great work. Olin Buchanan, somehow we were able to get Olin Buchanan on the program. We'll have
Celeb of the week.
Duh. He's been in movies. Ole Miss Insider. It is Up to the Second College Football. Now it's time for our big guest of the week. Braden Gall is the owner of 440 Sports, and of course you hear him on ESPN Radio all the time. I feel like that guy, not only does he fill in for everybody like Feinbaum, he does his own show like 20 times a day, and he's here on this show. What's going on, Braden?
I like big guests. My waistline agrees with that after the last couple of years.
I have to apologize because I texted you on Sunday, and I forgot, dude, this guy's so busy. He's probably at the Titans game or covering it right now. You were probably busy doing that.
Yes. Watching one of the most heinous football games I've seen all season. I was covering the Titans-Colts game, 19-10. No offensive touchdowns for the Tennessee Titans who win. But you know what? A W is a W in the NFL. It's not like college where it's a beauty contest. So, no, it was fun. And you never bother me, my man. Anytime.
Well, we'll get into bad offenses in college football that I get to cover quite a bit here in a moment. But let's talk a little Kentucky, Tennessee. Do you give Kentucky a chance with Will Levis looking he's healthy again, and maybe Tennessee looking ahead to Alabama? Excuse me, not to Alabama, to Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia coming up next weekend. It's hard. I do think that Mark Stoops is talented enough. The offense that Tennessee runs, the Baylor offense, is not this newfound secret that no one knows how to game plan against. You just need certain things. You need pretty good corners. You need good guys up front that can stop the run sort of on their own with 4 or 5, maybe 6 guys in the box so that you can cover as much as possible. So it's not like rocket scientist schematically. So I think Stoops has got that figured out, and he's got some nice pieces there. I just don't like tennis. And on the show, David Ubben from The Athletic compared it to the pick and roll in basketball. Like You know that Stockton and Malone are what they're going to do. It doesn't mean you can stop Karl Malone from knocking down jumpers or executing, or Steph Curry or whatever it is. And so everybody kind of knows what Tennessee's going to do. I think the bigger question is on the other side. I think that Kentucky will make it difficult for a period of time for Tennessee's offense, but largely they're going to get to their 35 points. So the question is, can Will Levis, Barian Brown's going to be a big factor. Tennessee's corners are terrible. So can you attack down the field and hit Tennessee where they are weakest, which is in their secondary down the field? And so Alabama sort of couldn't do that. LSU is sort of starting to do that, but couldn't do that. Pittsburgh certainly couldn't do that. Florida couldn't do that. I don't know. Kentucky's got the quarterback to do it. They may have the receiver. I don't know if they've got the offensive line to protect him. So long answer is I don't think so. And frankly, Kentucky, for all of its growth and progress, the 3 wins since 1984 against Tennessee came against 3 of the worst Tennessee teams. That was Jeremy Pruitt got fired, Butch Jones got fired, and then the Doolander in 2011. So Kentucky does not normally win this game.
So who, in your opinion, is the best team in college football so far?
I think the answer is Georgia or Ohio State, depending on a couple of different things. Ohio State's defensive front, and then looking at Georgia's down the field ability. Like, that's where Tennessee's actually uniquely qualified to attack Georgia, because much like Alabama, they don't have the George Pickens, they don't have the Jalen Waddles, the Devontae Smiths, the guys that really truly can go down the field and challenge you vertically, sort of the way Tennessee can with Hyatt and Tillman and McCoy. So I think Georgia has a little weakness there. Their ability to go down the field has been tested. Missouri did that, dared them to do it. Stetson Bennett couldn't do it, but they're still one of the best teams. Like, again, I think it's Georgia, Ohio State. I could make the case that Alabama is still number 3. I don't think you can argue Clemson. I think Tennessee and Michigan are pretty close. I would lean Tennessee over Michigan. I think you have to put Tennessee above Alabama, even though I think that was a perfect storm of what happened in that one moment that night. Bryce Young still did truly spectacular things in that game that I think are being overlooked. So I would lean Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, but ask me tomorrow and I might switch. There's some teams that can be dangerous, though, in a playoff situation, unlike we've seen in the past.
So because things have been so bad at Texas A&M, I'm going to go back to 2020 when things were really good, and I feel like A&M should have been the 3rd team to get into the playoff from the SEC, over Notre Dame. I feel like it should have happened with the year that they had. But now we're in a situation that we could see 3 SEC teams in the playoffs, right? Like there's a world where that could still happen.
It's possible. I think there's 2 things working against that. One, the committee, I think, is going to do everything in its power to give championships, again, whether that's right or wrong, give championships be the tiebreaker, right? That's going to be the tiebreaker. I think Alabama could lose to LSU in 2 weeks. So I think Alabama might be out of this quicker than people think. But it's possible if Alabama runs the table, Georgia's 12-0, and they rematch like they did last year. Tennessee's 11-1. Tennessee has as good a resume as anybody else in college football at that point, because they'd have a win over Bama, Kentucky, and LSU on the road, and South Carolina on the road, which is turning into a better win, and Pittsburgh on the road. Like, they're going to have some good wins on the resume. So the problem is 12-1 Oregon, undefeated Clemson, 1-loss Clemson. I don't think TCU's undefeated at the end of the year, but is there going to be a 1-loss Big 12 champ? Maybe. I think Michigan as a 1-loss team is very deserving. And the irony of there being potentially 2 Big Ten teams and 2 SEC teams in the same playoff, like after the year we've had where it's all just Big Ten SEC controlling everything, I think that would be extremely ironic. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think the committee would push everything in their power to not make it happen. But if Tennessee is the 3rd team, specifically Tennessee, if they are the 3rd team and they are 11-1, it's that resume is as salty as anybody else's. So I don't think it's going to happen, but man, it's fun to think about it.
All right, listen to this hot sports take that I had a couple weeks ago. I don't know if we're going to see Nick Saban win another national championship. And the reason I say that, again, things can change, but they didn't win last year. I don't think they're getting to the playoffs this year. And next year, who knows what happens with the transfer in portal, but Bryce Young's gone. All these guys are probably gone. They're going to start fresh again. Maybe they can figure it out, but put it this way. It's going to be at least 3 years between championships for Nick Saban. It feels that way right now.
So you'll take a bet with me that Alabama does not win, not counting this year, because I'm with you. I'm not picking them to win the championship this year, even though that's what we all did at the beginning of the season. Clearly, they've got more weaknesses than we thought, some of the problems. But you're saying 23, 24, and 25, Alabama does not win a national championship in any of the next 4 seasons. I would take the other side of that bet. I would take Alabama to do it. Now,
Nick Saban's the greatest coach of all time, so no, I wouldn't take that bet. But Hot Sports take Jake right now. At least the next couple of years, I don't see him winning.
Who knows? Bryce, Tua showed up and was made Jalen Hurts go to Oklahoma. So you never know what's going to happen. I wouldn't bet against Nick Saban. I do think what's interesting, and I know there were some fake Twitter accounts that got some folks on social this week. I do think that it could be as simple as Nick Saban waking up one day, and I think people misled when I tweeted this, that I think Nick Saban's just going to wake up one day and is all of a sudden going to be like, this is no longer in my players' best interest. This is no longer in my team's best interest. I am not operating at the same standard that I have set for myself. And as soon as that happens in his head, he's out. He could just walk away and just announce a retirement, and it's just like a random Tuesday in June or something. Who knows? But I think that people are like, oh, that he's too calculating for that. And I'm like, yeah, he's already done all the calculations. He's already prepared for that moment when it happens, that he's just like, I am no longer as good as I used to be. I'm not living up to the standard that I set for myself. It is time for me to do what's best for my team and my players and to walk away. And I think that's going to happen just out of the blue. There's not going to be rumblings about it. There's not going to be stories. There's not going to be waffling. Oh, I'm going to hang out with Miss Terry on Lake Rainier and contemplate the meaning of life. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's just going to wake up one morning and be like, that's it. I'm done. But he will have already done all the calculations. So I think that's a different topic than what you're saying, because I don't think, as long as he's the head coach for the next 5 years, they're going to win another national championship. The obituary on the Alabama dynasty has been written dozens of times, and dozens of times he's proved them all wrong. So I that is a hot take, though. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and I don't know if I fully believe it, but I don't think they're winning this year. I don't think they're winning next year. And then who knows? Then that moment happens. But I would not take the bet.
Yeah.
It's like Belichick, right? I know they're terrible right now, but I'm not going to bet against the greatest NFL coach of all time. Let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you a question that's obvious, but how shocking is this A&M season? And I say that to you thinking it's shocking to me, but if I really looked at it, we saw the writing on the wall last year against Colorado. We saw the writing against the wall against LSU and Ole Miss. This offense has been so bad for so long that it should be obvious, but here we are, kind of shocked at where A&M is.
Yeah, the definition of insanity, right? Trying the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I think I find the whole entire Jimbo Fisher situation to be so fascinating for a number of reasons. Number one, I don't think the program is in a bad place. No one thinks that they are not the infrastructure that you need to run a major college football program at the highest levels is all right there. There's no major flaw in the system or in the machinery that's causing these problems from a foundational standpoint. Not like where Tennessee was, where you got a guy running the athletic department who's not even qualified to be even in the building. So it's not like they've got structural issues. That's really interesting to me. The history of Fisher with the 2 seasons, and I would, to your point, 2 years ago when he got the best quarterback play and the best offensive line play that he's had since being at Texas A&M, they had the best season, shockingly. There's that, which is interesting. And then you go back to Winston and Jameis, and you go, what were his best seasons at Florida State? Well, it's clearly when he got the best quarterback play with Jameis Winston for those 2 years. And everything before Jameis was kind of they're underachieving. After Jameis, it was, there's a little bit of chaos. Before Kellen Mond's final season, there was sort of underachieving. And now it feels like they're back to chaos again. So this is also kind of a track record here. At the end of all of that, he's probably one offensive coordinator away from having a really, really, really good program. If I joke all the time, he just needs to hang out with Aaron Rodgers, do some ayahuasca, and hang out in West Texas at some high school games in the offseason to reinvent the offense, because it's not working. There's nothing I'm going to say to you right now that people are going to hear that's new. It's, the offense is too complicated. It's too slow. He needs to evolve, blah, blah. It's all the same stuff. But just take your hands off of it. Let your ego get out of the way and hire somebody who's modernized everything. And if you do that, I don't think they're that far away. Like that's what makes the whole thing so interesting. Like 3-4 feels really far away from Tennessee right now, which has done it in 2 years, right? But it's not. That's a transfer quarterback and one big win over Bama, and Tennessee's where they are now, right? Like it doesn't take a whole lot to turn the program quickly. But it takes Jimbo doing the thing that Jimbo doesn't like to do, which is to pull himself out of it, less control, less hands-on, take the ego out of it. And that's a hard thing for football coaches to do across the country.
Braden, I'm going to follow that up with this thought that is not original, but I've talked about it on this show many times. If A&M has the 60th ranked offense in the country, they have 119th. If they have 60th, they maybe have one loss this year. And that just shows you all these games are one or two possessions away. With as bad as that offense is, they're all winnable. Give me a little bit of offense, you're winning games.
Yeah, and that's I think that's a great point to sort of wrap up what I was just saying, which is I don't think they're far away. Like the program to run a major college football program at the national championship level, you need like a million things, including millions of dollars. And you need infrastructure, you need alignment, you need leadership, you need chancellors and presidents and board of trustees and athletic directors that are all helping you pull in the right direction. You need recruiting, you need the ball to bounce your way, you need some penalties to go your way. Like you need everything to compete at that level. And it's sort of like the only thing they're missing is just the offensive schematic design, because again, 24 points is like a half of football in college football. And this team can't get over 24 points like at all against FBS opponents. You guys know the numbers. I don't have to tell you. So South Carolina, Alabama, that's 2 right there. You probably win with an offense. I'm not going to Mississippi State. Arkansas, you probably got lucky to win that game. So App State, you win without question. So like you said, you can rattle off 3 wins right away that this team has if they just have a competent offense. The other side of that real quickly is just let Connor take the ball for the last month. Like just see what you got. You're at 3-4. It's already a quote unquote failure of a season. Let's see if you can finish on a high note and find out what you got with the 5-star freshman. Let him play. Like you may not have a choice, but let him play.
Braden, great work, man. Let's do it again, brother.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
At Academy Sports and Outdoors, bikes for the whole family are just a click away. Buy online at academy.com with our free in-store assembly. Your next set of wheels, plus helmets, pads, and water bottles will be waiting for you at our in-store pickup counter. Get to the fun faster with our in-store pickup and free assembly at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
So it's supposed to be time for our big game of the week. This is not really the big game of the week. It's more like the interesting game of the week, if you will, with Ole Miss suffering their first loss over the weekend and then A&M having a hard time. Let's talk about it from both perspectives. Brad Logan from Inside the Rebels on 247, the Logan Media Network, and Believe in Ole Miss podcast, and Olin Buchanan, my partner on TexAgs. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And the awkward silence continues. That's what happens when you do things on Zoom. Everybody waits. Brad, so we knew that Ole Miss had a backloaded schedule, right? That was, and a lot of people were not surprised by the success that they had early on. But do we know who this Ole Miss team is now?
I think we know a little bit better. Unfortunately for Ole Miss, what we've seen is that they tried to establish the running game against LSU. What they didn't expect was to have kind of a makeshift offensive line that had some injuries up front with Nick Broker and then Jeremy James. So that forced some younger players to play the right tackle and left tackle spot with Micah Pettis along with Jaden Williams. When that happened, you had Ali Gay and B.J. Ojolari have their way with that Ole Miss offensive line. Now, Ole Miss was able to get out to that 17-3 lead. Of course, we know what happened then. I think a lot of that was just some schematic things that was going on defensively for LSU. They were able to make some changes, and they stifled this Ole Miss offense for the most part. Now, the good news for Ole Miss is going forward, you had some wide receivers kind of running open. Unfortunately, Jackson Dart just could not get the ball down the field because that defensive front for LSU just put so much pressure on him. Offensive front for Ole Miss just could not stop that LSU defensive line. So that forced Jackson Dart to make some turnovers, throw some interceptions. and then, of course, could not get the ball down the field and stifling that offense. And then if that's the case, they couldn't run the ball at all. Quinshon Judkins did have 111 yards, but Zach Evans is dealing with a right knee injury. And that brings me to my next point, David and Olin. This team is just absolutely battered with injuries. So the question is who is Ole Miss going to be able to play both on offense and defense? And we can get into those injuries, but that's kind of going to be my question to you guys when we talk about A&M with so many suspensions, quarterback injuries there. Who's going to play for A&M? It's going to kind of be a hodgepodge on Saturday night in College Station, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no doubt about that. OB, this is something we talk about on the show all the time. To me, it doesn't matter who A&M's playing. Like the games all have a similar feel. App State, Alabama, I don't know. It comes down to a couple mistakes, and this is who A&M is this year.
And similar to Ole Miss, A&M has all kinds of injuries, but it doesn't really seem to matter who's in the game. You see a team that is very inconsistent. They don't protect the quarterback. The running game's been kind of hit and miss. And defensively, they have all kinds of trouble stopping the run. And against a team like Ole Miss, I think if you have an issue stopping the run, you're asking for trouble. I think A&M can manufacture a pass rush. I think their secondary is pretty solid. But the fact is, teams that aren't supposed to run have been able to run on Texas A&M. So when you go up against an opponent that's actually been running the ball effectively, I don't know how you go in there feeling optimistic.
Brad, let's talk a little bit about what Lane's been able to do with this offense, because we think of Ole Miss a certain way, like they're going to go fast, they're going to spread you out, and sure, they run the ball, but really this year the run has established everything that they do. That's their identity.
Without question. And what Ole Miss needed to do against LSU was to run the ball to set up the passing game, and they just weren't able to do that. LSU really pressed them down and forced Ole Miss to go to the air early. Now, they had some success, like I said, went up 17-3, but they stopped those passing lanes for the most part because they put so much pressure on Jackson Dart. Now, the question, too, is what they were able to do whenever LSU put the pressure on. Dart was able to scramble, was able to get some positive yards scrambling around the ends, but what he did was he pressed. And when he pressed, he made mistakes. And I think in order for Texas A&M to have success against Ole Miss, they're going to have to bring the kitchen sink. That's exactly what LSU did. They put their secondary on islands, and Ole Miss had receivers running wide open, and Dart just could not get them the ball. At one point, it was 17-3, and Ole Miss was driving. Jonathan Mingo was running wide open down the middle, but there was so much pressure on Jackson Dart. He let the ball go and overthrew him for probably 5 or 6 yards, and that was kind of the tail of the tape the rest of the way. Also, Ole Miss is really struggling at the tight end position. Michael Trigg, the transfer out of USC, broke his collarbone, so he's out for the year. Casey Kelly is the tight end now, dropped a couple of big third down plays and also dropped a touchdown. So Ole Miss is really struggling at tight end right now. They don't have anyone that can come in and make big plays, specifically catching the football down the field, which puts more pressure on Dart as the quarterback.
Olin, the problem for A&M defensively has been stopping the run. They've been a very good defense, limiting teams from scoring, but teams do gash them for the run.
It's, when Mississippi State actually runs for, 140 yards against you, and we know that Mississippi State's running game is actually kind of just short passes, but in that game, it was traditional runs. And when you have a hard time stopping them, when Appalachian State runs on you like they did, especially in the second half, Alabama ran on them. Of course, that you can understand to a certain degree, but it's just been a weekly thing. And again, sometimes it's against teams you're not expecting to have a lot of success running. So they've got to do a better job at linebacker. Having Andre White back for his second game, they did a little bit better job against South Carolina with Andre White back in the lineup. Been out since that season opener. Having him back, I think he's the linebacker with the best instincts, the best linebacking instincts against the run. So that helps. But they're just going to have to get better linebacker, make more plays up front in the line. But I have to believe that their safeties are going to be having to come. I don't know if Antonio Johnson's playing or not, but Damani Richardson, those guys are going to have to come up and help on the run. And as mentioned, that can create opportunities in the passing game. But if A&M can't stop the run, they're not going to be able to win.
OB, I'm going to keep it with you here for a second because I feel like the narrative for Ole Miss is still being written. For A&M, it feels like we know who this team is. Just how bad is it going to be at the end of the year? Can they still rewrite their story?
Sure. I think I think they can't rewrite it into what they hoped it would be this year. But is the potential there to go on a run and get into a bowl game and salvage the season? Yeah, you look at a Florida team. I think A&M has a great chance to beat them in College Station. I look at Auburn. I think A&M has a great chance to beat them. They're going to beat UMass. I think that the other two games are going to decide just how are you going to write this script. It's Ole Miss and LSU, both at home. But quite frankly, have you seen anything that you could look at and say, all right, this is the reason I would have confidence against that game? Maybe because LSU was able to move the football against Ole Miss, you think you can move the football. But quite frankly, A&M hasn't consistently moved the football against any defense this year. So until they actually show that they can score more than 2 touchdowns, you're going to have to be skeptical that they can do so.
Brad, the narrative for Ole Miss, I think really we'll find out now. A great start to the season, but here comes the tough part of the schedule. Already have 1 loss. Going on the road at Kyle Field is another very difficult game, regardless of the team that A&M has out there. Talk to us a little bit about how their story can change.
Without question. And, coming into the season, we knew that Ole Miss had a very, back-end difficult schedule, and we kind of knew that. But the good news is you had so many transfers coming in, starting with quarterback Jackson Dart, all the way down to wide receiver. Had a wide receiver out of Louisville. They had a number of defensive players that have come in, Troy Brown among the many. So the question is we knew it would kind of be at this point. So now that Ole Miss stands at 7-1, losing to LSU, the season is either going to go of one of 2 ways, in my opinion, after Saturday. Either Ole Miss beats Texas A&M in College Station and comes home and gets an off week before it faces Alabama with a record of 8-1. College game day will probably be in town. It'll be a game in which 2 top 10 teams are getting after each other. Or if they lose, Ole Miss falls to 7-2. Quite frankly, David and Nolan, I don't know that Ole Miss is going to win another game, because you look at the schedule going forward, and it's just not conducive for the history of how this program has moved forward. Because you come home and face an Alabama team that's going to be number 1 or number 2 in the country, maybe 3 or 4, whatever. But Ole Miss just has not historically played well against Alabama, except the 2 years they beat them under Hugh Freeze. Then you fast forward and go talk about a team that's going to Fayetteville, Arkansas, to face an Arkansas team that's got, a running quarterback that's been the nemesis for this Ole Miss defense. Facing them in Fayetteville, where it hasn't won since 2008. Before that, it's only won in Fayetteville a handful of times in the history of the program. So then you follow up with a game against Mississippi State. You guys know about Mississippi State. They're 0-2 against Ole Miss under Mike Leach, under that regime. So the Rebels are going to have quite a handful to deal with going down the stretch. This team very well could finish 7-5. And that's a difficult stretch, and that's very difficult to stomach. Then you're talking about maybe a Liberty Bowl and a team that's absolutely reeling. So you can see where I think this would be a monumental win for Ole Miss, and it can absolutely be a debilitating loss one way or the other for this Ole Miss football team.
Brad Logan, Olin Buchanan, thank you guys very much. We'll do it again. All right, Kennedy, you got us a huge guest, 1996 Heisman Trophy winner, all that success with Coach Spurrier there at the Florida Gators. I'll let you do the introduction for Danny Wuerfell, which I just basically did.
Danny Wuerfell, everybody. Need no further introduction other than the Heisman winner. I mean, it's a big guest. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you for joining us. So obviously a huge game coming up this weekend for the Florida Gators, taking on Georgia, the national champions, a team that they don't lose. Their defense is always legit, and they've been bringing it. Your thoughts as the Gators are trying to navigate through a tough stretch with Georgia coming up?
Well, there's been different times in the era of this rivalry where I was more excited about the game, to be honest. Back in the 90s, we had our way, and that was great. But this is Bulldog time right now. They are just a locked and loaded program. I think one of the premier, obviously, in the country. Florida's in a rebuilding. I'm really, really excited about our coach and where we're going, but we're not there yet. So I think as much as my heart would love to kind of pull some sort of miracle out here for the Gators, my mind reminds me that this is still Bulldog time.
What are you liking so far about Anthony Richardson's playing this year?
I think everybody pretty quickly latched on to his athletic ability, his arm talent, his ability to run, and really kind of got probably overwhelmed with expectations for such a young player who really hasn't played that much. So I think some of that was put on him pretty quick, and I think that got to him a little bit. I think he's learning this Napier offense, which is a fantastic offense, but I think it's a little bit more complicated on the quarterback than other offenses in college football. So I think he's learning that, getting better every week. I really like the young man. I think he's got a huge upside. He's making progress, and I'm just really, really thrilled that he's our quarterback.
Dan, let's talk a little bit about the SEC East overall, because it feels, at least, that now they're stronger than the SEC West, what we're seeing from Tennessee, what we're seeing from Georgia, and really goes on and on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting year. I don't think many of us would have predicted a lot of these things that are happening, especially with the Tennessee movement. That's just been amazing. And then, to think that Alabama is not just always the same Alabama for the first time, seems like in years, really sort of shifts the dynamic of power. And so, yeah, it's pretty exciting. Kentucky started off strong as well. And so you just never know how this thing could unfold. It's really shaping up to be the most exciting game, being the Tennessee-Georgia game down the road a bit.
Well, they started off the year with the best recruiting class ever, and now they've got a 3-4 record. Are you surprised what's happening with Texas A&M this year?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think, Jimbo Fisher has done so well everywhere he's been, and just really good recruiting classes here. So there definitely is a surprise at this point, but man, I would never count him or them out. I think they'll probably come back strong this year. And of course, with that kind of talent, future, I think is still very bright.
Yeah, and Florida's going to be joining Texas A&M here at Kyle Field in a couple of weeks, so we may have to get you back on the show. Let's go through that magical season in '96, really just that magical run you had there with the Florida Gators. Talk about your Heisman run and also just what Coach Spurrier means to you and what that time in Florida Gator football felt like.
Well, Coach Spurrier called me the other day. He left a message. He said, "Man, Danny, our team, we're halfway through the season this year, and we've lost 3 SEC games." He's talking about this year, and he goes, "Danny, you know how many games you lost in 4 years? You lost 2 SEC games in 4 years." And so, like, when you put that into perspective, sometimes I wonder if it really happened. Like, it was such a magical 4 years at Florida, and then to have the last game of my last year be the national championship game against our arch rival in Florida State. It's really hard to kind of really believe that happened, and the memories are fantastic. The friendships are still strong. Several of those guys, I mean, I stay with several friends in Gainesville, Chris Dorings, James Bates, stay in touch with a lot of my former teammates. And, Coach Spurrier just had a very ahead of the game type of offense and mentality. And I was fortunate to play with him. It changed the trajectory of Florida, probably college football, and in many ways definitely changed the trajectory of my life.
Love hearing about that. Well, Danny, you've got a big event coming up this week. Can you tell us a little bit about this Desire Cup?
Yeah, so, we like to call it the Florida-Georgia game, but I live here in Atlanta, and people here say you can't call it that. But people also ask me, why did I move to Georgia, that they're going to give me trouble? And the best I can say is at least they never gave me any trouble back in the 90s, but that's the only – you got to go back a long time to pick on Georgia now. But we put together this really fun event. It's a celebrity golf tournament. We got Florida celebs and coaches and Georgia celebs and coaches. We've been doing it for 12 years. It's been a fantastic fundraiser for Desire Street, which is the organization I've been working at really since 1997 as a rookie with the Saints. And we work in under-resourced neighborhoods all over the Southeast. And this is our big fundraiser. So we got the desirecup.com. And then we added a pickleball event. You may know pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the country. And we created a Pro-Am pickleball event where we have like the best pickleball players in the world partnering with celebrities to represent their college. So like I'm playing with a pro pickleball player from Florida against Drew Brees and a pro pickleball player from Purdue. And we've got Matt Stinchcomb and Connor Shaw and a lot of other celebs playing. So it's going to be a great week. I'm actually getting ready to head down there not too long after we visit.
All right. Well, Danny, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. As I mentioned, when A&M and Florida meet up here soon, let's get you back on and chit-chat about that. Thanks for your time, and Awesome to follow your career throughout the years, my friend.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Need a new grill? Academy Sports and Outdoors is the destination for your outdoor cooking needs. With our free in-store assembly and pre-assembled grills and smokers, buy online at academy.com and pick up in-store. So keep those grilling plans at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
All right, now we are sitting down with Kentucky insider Adam Luckett with Kentucky Sports Radio. He's going to be talking a little bit about this weekend's matchup between Kentucky and Tennessee. How are you doing, Adam?
Good, Kennedy. Thanks for having me today.
Great to have you on. Now, I feel like this weekend is really defined by these star-studded quarterbacks the two teams have. So to start us off, run me down how you think Will Levis's performance has been so far this season.
I think Will Levis, from just as being a quarterback, in his standpoint, he's really taken the next step. Like, I think we've seen play out why he was high on draft boards this offseason. Big arm, can make every throw, is playing in a pro-style system, seems to be in total control. But the biggest thing has been just the protection has not been good for Kentucky. Pass protection has been a big issue, and until Chris Rodriguez returned just a couple weeks ago, finding balance with the running game was a big issue. So a lot was on Levis's shoulders, and he was taking a beating, which is showing why he missed the South Carolina game a couple weeks ago. But all in all, I think he's been about as good as you could have hoped for or expected. Averaging over 10 yards per attempt. Some of the explosive passing numbers are right there, top 5, top 10 nationally. He's been really good. It's just been, for Kentucky, kind of the surrounding parts that let him down a little bit. And that's really what's kind of put a hard ceiling on this offense at certain points in the season. But now that they got Chris Rodriguez back, the O-line's getting better. It seems like the arrow's pointing up for the offense, and they're hopeful they can close strong in these last 5 games.
Well, on the other side now, how do you see the Wildcats' defense sizing up against Hendon Hooker and these Tennessee skill players?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty tough. I mean, this is an offense putting up a 50-burger per game, but Kentucky they've been very, very good on defense this year. You could make the argument it's a top 10 defense in college football this season. They don't really have one true weakness, I would say. They play really good team defense. They don't really have any stars. Like, I don't know if we'll look up at all SEC teams and see many Kentucky players on there, but they're old, they're experienced, and they're very smart. And their defensive coordinator, Brad White, I think, is one of the more underrated play callers in college football. Kentucky knows who they are. They play to an identity, both on offense and defense, and they're typically a group that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. There's not going to be a lot of coverage bust, stuff like that. They in the words of Bill Belichick, they do their jobs, and that leads to success. Now we'll see how it happens against Tennessee. I think the big thing for Kentucky is you don't want Jalen Hyatt streaking down the middle of the field wide open for 60, 70-yard bomb. If they can limit that, I think they're going to have a chance to get some stops and hang in this game. But if they don't, it can be a long day if this game turns into a shootout.
Well, considering the preseason expectations, what do you think that this win would do for Kentucky?
This win, I think, for Kentucky, like, the season's a success if they win on Saturday. They go down, Tennessee's having a dream season. It's, for Kentucky fans, specifically in the south to eastern portion of the state, this is the number one rivalry. Mm-hmm. You beat Tennessee, undefeated Tennessee, number 3 Tennessee, with a potential Heisman Trophy quarterback. That's the kind of win in a rivalry that will hang around for a long, long time. So for Kentucky, there's a house money situation, I think, for them. No one's really expecting them to win, but Kentucky's thinking they got a pretty good team. They can go down here and win. If they win, the season is just there was high expectations going into the season. It's going to be hard at this point to host Georgia November 19th for the SEC East title, but going down and beating Tennessee makes everybody's going to forget about the tough losses that happened this year if you're able to go down and win a game like this.
Right. Can you give me a quick rundown on what the history of this matchup has been like over the past couple of years?
Yeah, Tennessee had the long winning streak over Kentucky for forever. Kentucky snaps that, but since then, Kentucky hasn't been able to take advantage of a down Tennessee program. I believe they're 3-7 in the last 10. They've gotten some wins, but they were against bad Tennessee teams, which there were a lot of bad Tennessee teams during that time. But it's just been kind of a program and a fan base that's kind of just tormented Kentucky's football program and fan base for most people's lifetimes that have been following the team. So there's a lot of anxiety, I think, on Kentucky's end, just thinking what can go wrong, will go wrong in this series. And Mark Stoops and them have knocked down a lot of big doors, right? They've won 2 of the last 3 times in the Swamp. They're playing for SEC East titles. They're winning 10 games a year. They're playing Georgia in biggest games in the SEC East, but the Tennessee has really kind of been a thorn in their side. Last year, they felt they had a better team than Tennessee, and they let one slip away at home. 2018, they go down there, 10-win team cannot beat a bad Tennessee team, and so this is the one that they have to start winning more often. And so that's really the one thing for Kentucky now that's kind of been holding them back. They are beating South Carolina consistently. They're beating Missouri consistently. They're beating Florida 3 out of 5. They're beating them consistently now. Now they got to start beating Tennessee more. And that, as Kentucky continues this climb up the SEC ladder, getting on the right side of the series is really important.
Now, I know you can't really answer this for sure, but do you see Mark Stoops going anywhere?
Yeah, I never say never. As of right now, no. With the job openings in this market, I do not see that happening. I think if Iowa comes open, I know there's a lot of scuttlebutt up there with unhappy about the offense. That's always been a possibility because he played there, his brothers played there. It's a special place. Leaning into the Citrus Bowl, they talked about when his dad died, they buried him with his Iowa jersey. Like, that's a very special place to him. So that would be interesting if that opened, but I don't think it's a slam dunk decision for him to leave Kentucky for Iowa. Outside of that, I think the way Mark Stoops coaches and builds and wants to win, it seems like a Big Ten program would be the best fit potentially, but you don't see any of those big ones opening. So as of right now, I think he's going to be standing put, but like we've seen with the carousel, things can get crazy. People can make crazy decisions, and so we'll see. But I think Kentucky feels comfortable that he's still going to be here for a few more years at least.
All right. What do you think the main thing that Kentucky really needs to achieve in order to pull off this win will be?
Yeah, I know this is kind of the cop-out when you're talking about upsets, but turnovers, like if they can get a couple turnovers, I think it's going to be big, especially with how Kentucky's going to want to play. They're going to shrink this game. They're not going to want to get in a track meet, up and down shootout with Tennessee. They're going to want to milk the clock, keep Tennessee on the sidelines, limit possessions. And if you get in a limited possession game and you can steal 1 or 2 possessions there at stops and get a turnover, I think that's the ticket for Kentucky. I think really it's hanging in early. You're not getting overwhelmed by Tennessee's tempo early in that game, just hanging around and getting into that stadium, close game in the fourth quarter where it maybe starts to get a little nervous energy, fills that place, and then if you can get a turnover too, you're going to have a great shot, and then you got to hope your star quarterback can go win it for you late.
Right. It's not a cop-out if it's the truth.
Right.
Thank you so much. That
go.
is Adam Luckett with Kentucky Sports Radio. Looking forward to watching this matchup this weekend.
Well, that does it for another phenomenal or average episode of
Up to the Second, college football. We're supposed to say that at the end. We've got reviews to do right now.
Oh, what are we supposed to do now?
I don't know. How'd you feel about the episode? I love talking to Danny.
Danny was great. That was a good get. I liked Braden Gall. He was good. I liked your conversation there, talking a little Kentucky. Kennedy talking Kentucky, Tennessee.
Ken and Ken.
It was good stuff. So Adam Luckett was really good. So I appreciate you doing all that. We will hopefully see you guys next week, and we'll
hopefully with another Aggie win under our belts. But
number 4,
fingers are being crossed.
As we get ready for a lot of other stuff.
We're just trying to bat 500 this year, okay?
Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to suspend Kennedy from the show, and we're going to move on. Thanks for watching.